give me the list. And if I do these things, my kid's going to turn out okay. We just don't get that guarantee. But as parents, you make the best decision you can. And with homeschooling, you're more in the driver's seat than you are when your child is in private or public school. Some days, because I have felt like a failure, I have felt like giving up. I have felt like, did we learn today? What did we do? So it's just that time I take to self reflect and say, what did happen today? Because I feel like all I did was put out fires and discipline children, and the dog came in with muddy feet and it felt like chaos. I was
Yeah.
running a circus instead of a homeschool.
Mm.
What did we learn? We learned how to problem solve. We did get some math problems done. It might not have been as many as I hoped. And we read some good books.
Welcome to the show, Brandy. You've homeschooled 4 of your kids right here in Maryland. What made you decide to homeschool your children?
Well, thank you for having me. Yes, I've homeschooled all four of my children from the start. And with our oldest, it was just kind of a natural progression. I never envisioned myself as a homeschool parent, but we were a military family and we had just moved to Maryland from Texas when she was going to start kindergarten. And she was kind of a high need child, very clingy, very nervous. And I had twins at the time that were young. And so I thought, well, let's try this. And so it was just kind of a natural plan for us to give it a try. I never thought I would homeschool all the way through high school, but we have been blessed with finding some co-ops that really gave us structure and accountability and support to do that. We use a co-op called Classical Conversations, and it has given us the academic rigor. It has given me training as a parent, given my kids friends and me friends too, to walk alongside and do this kind of, I say unique, but it's less and less unique now in today's world. There are so many homeschooling options for families, and Maryland does a great job of supporting.
Thank you for sharing your journey on how you decided this. So, I want to start with the basics, which is basically the scariest part for beginners.
Mhm.
Are there any legal requirements in the state of Maryland regarding homeschooling your child? What paperwork do we file, and what is the official first step to take?
Yeah, so the official first step would be to file the paperwork with the public school system. They have on their website, you can search, they have a home instruction segment of their website and they have staff that staff that, and they are in charge of taking in all the forms and communicating with you, and then you can get reviewed by the public school system, or you'll probably ask me about that later. There's also umbrella groups that you can enroll with. So that would be the first thing. You have to do that 15 days before you intend to start. So usually sometimes parents will pull their kids in the middle of the school year, but usually it's going to be in August. You say, this school year we're homeschooling. Let's fill out that form. Let's tell the public school of our intent. They'll respond to you and say you're good to go. They'll tell you what subjects you are required by the state of Maryland to instruct your child in. So they want you to do all the basics. It's nothing surprising. It's math, science, civics, health, art, English, grammar. So that's all laid out for the parents. It's pretty clear. Within that, there's a lot of flexibility, but what they really wanted to see is consistent instruction in those subjects. And so usually you're going to be reviewed if you're with the county twice a year, once in the fall, once in the spring. And
By reviewed, you mean like tests?
well, what they do is they set up a meeting with you. I have done them virtually, and they ask you to show some of your students' work. And so that can be, okay, we're using this curriculum for math, and here are some of the worksheets that my elementary student has filled out. Or for PE, they even take pictures. Here are pictures. Okay, he's enrolled in baseball. Here he is in his uniform at a game. They've accepted family hikes. They just want documentation that you actually are instructing your child consistently. We can't just do a little bit and then take a huge long 6 weeks off and do nothing.
Mhm.
So that's really what they're looking for. And it's very similar if you sign up for an umbrella group. Usually there's a fee for that.
Can you explain that a little bit more in detail? So, in Maryland, do parents have to choose an umbrella path? And what is this umbrella path?
You do not have to choose the umbrella. You can simply send your letter of intent to the public school system and choose your curriculum or your co-op or both, and then start instructing your child. And with the public school system, they email you, hey, it's time for a review. You choose a date and how you want to do it. Some people send something in, some people do a webinar. They used to do in-person reviews. I'm not sure if they still do. COVID kind of changed our life with that. And then you just do that twice a year. With an umbrella, if you're new to an umbrella, they want to see you twice a year. Typically, there's a registration fee for that. And the nice thing about an umbrella is, especially if you have older children, they maintain a transcript for you, for your student. So you don't have to do that yourself. Now, there are online platforms and lots of ways you can do your own transcript as a parent. But the umbrella is a nice little support, and it helps you feel like you're not going to let anything fall through the cracks. They also give, like for SATs, the schools have a school number. There's an umbrella number that you can get your SATs reported to your umbrella. So it's not a requirement. It's really an either or. The umbrellas that I'm familiar with are religious. So if that's important to a family, they require, for us, it's a Christian umbrella group. And so they require Bible instruction as well. Now, the public schools do not, but they want to see
Basically,
Bible instruction.
in a nutshell, umbrella is basically someone who's watching over your education system at home,
Mhm,
right? Like the
mhm.
system at home. So you either enroll with them and use their curriculum, or you just kind of enroll with the county and use that curriculum. Is that
Well, and in an umbrella, they don't actually have a curriculum. It's just oversight that you're doing the instruction, and then the other piece that parents like is the transcript support.
all right? And what is a portfolio review? I was reading about this and I did not understand. Just for our viewers, if you could explain the
Sure.
portfolio review properly.
Yeah. They're wanting to see the instruction is happening consistently. So parents will kind of make a folder with the different subjects and date their items and then say, okay, this was from September, this was from October, this was from November, so that the school system or the umbrella group can see there's consistent instruction in every subject that the state of Maryland mandates must be taught to students that are home instructed. And that's it. So you're just showing them basically your students' work.
So it seems like starting out is not as difficult as it looks like. You just kind of file with the county, they approve it in 15 days. Is that correct?
Hmm. Yep.
And you're good to go. Now, if at any point you feel like you can't do it, are you allowed to join the public school system midway?
You are allowed to join. And again, you'd be having conversations, some kind of communication with the home instruction office, with the public
Mhm.
school system. I am not sure because I've never done that. I think there might be some testing involved for your student to know where they can be placed.
Okay. Moving on to the curriculum, books online, there's so much available. Like you said as well, in Maryland, there's so much
Mhm.
available. How do you know which one would be best for your child? Is there also like these support groups where a group of children and moms meet up and they kind of discuss what to do? Because the curriculum can make you feel lost.
It can, and it can be overwhelming because there are so many options. So for us, we've used this co-op called Classical Conversations. There are several in our area, Howard, like the Tri-County area. There's tutorials, and they function like a part-time school. Like you go 2 or 3 days a week and you get instruction from a teacher, and then the other days a week you're home and you're basically fulfilling the assignments that were given to you.
Is
So
this
for
free of
that,
cost?
that's sorry?
Is this free of cost?
No, they do have a charge. Mhm. Yeah, so Granite Classical is one, Heritage is another one. Chieftain is in Montgomery County. I'm not as familiar with them.
And which one did you use? Costco.
So our first year, I actually stayed home and I bought Sunlight curriculum and did it at home. And we decided we are strong extroverts in this home and we need to get out. And I was feeling as a parent, I need to get out. And so we started with Homesteaders, which is another co-op. Now that is not a tutorial where you drop off your kids a couple days a week. That is a co-op where the teachers are actually the parents. If you're going to join a co-op to teach, you can just submit proposal, I'd like to teach this class, and then there's a registration process and kids can sign up for different classes. They have both extracurricular classes like art, music, and PE, and then they have your core classes.
Okay.
Math, science, and reading and language arts. And for homesteaders, they go all the way through high school. They have a program. So we started there, and then I heard about classical conversations from a friend, and I kind of liked what I was hearing about it. I liked Charlotte Mason. She has a theory. It's like heavy on books and reading, and I loved that idea, especially
Mhm.
with young kids. I just thought they can just soak up language and ideas from reading good books.
Mhm.
So we started with that instead, and we have continued.
Mhm. So
through
if
that.
you were to pick one for someone who's just starting out elementary, which one would you start with in terms of curriculum?
What I love about classical conversations is it empowers the parents. There's a lot of instruction, and the academics are rigorous, and you have a vision for where you're headed. Because when you're in a community, you can see kids and families that have gone before your kids. You see what they're learning, and you do not have to choose the curriculum, it's already chosen for you. So for me, I needed that structure. I also really like the classical approach. It's teaching to the developmental age of the kids. So when they're young, they're doing a lot of rote memorization, which seems a little odd. When I first started, I thought, why are they memorizing this and they don't understand the why of it?
Mhm.
Partially it's because they're little and their brains just soak up things like a sponge.
That's
Then when
how
they
I grew up. There was a lot of rote memorization, and
okay,
you kind of just in India, that's how it is.
okay, yeah. And then when you get a little older, like older elementary and then of course middle school, you're doing a lot more question asking, a lot more discussion, and you're producing more things like essays. You're doing a science fair project. You're learning geography by drawing the world and these kinds of things. So with classical conversations, you have the structure, you have the academic rigor, you have the accountability because you're meeting once a week. And at the middle and high school level, they have deliverables due when they meet that once a week. At the elementary level, what I love about it is you are with people that are doing homeschooling and you have a lot of flexibility in what you do. So the once a week is introducing some memory work, which you work on at home. If you're a fourth, fifth, and sixth grader, you're doing 2 hours in the afternoon of English language writing with Institutes for Excellence in Writing and Essentials of the English Language. Those are the curriculums they use. And then you're doing 45 minutes of math skill building, quick math, lots of fun games to build their multiplication and addition, subtraction with speed. So you have flexibility. How am I going to do the history with my student? How am I going to do what math am I going to do? They do endorse a math, and actually the math might be changing as we go down the road because they wrote their own math curriculum. But when I had elementary students, I chose a curriculum and then we did that. But a lot of your day at home is very flexible for the elementary school student, which is great because you can go and do nature studies, you can learn through play outside, you can go on the field trips. We live in this area by DC. There's just amazing museums and things to go and explore together when they're young. So that flexibility is really awesome.
Let's talk about schedule. You know, you mentioned flexibility, but what does a normal day look like? Because if I'm beginning my homeschooling journey, I would just be confused like what time of the day do I teach what and for how long, right? So do you kind of do what the normal school system does at home? Do you pick and
Yeah,
choose? Like how do you
similar.
create that schedule?
So, if you have an elementary school student, you can really knock out all of your core things in just a few hours. And so you have the rest of the day to do the field trips, to teach life skills, to read good books. And that's how I operated with my elementary students. We would do math first because our brains were freshest. So it was chores, breakfast, math, and then we just followed up with writing. We did spelling and reading, and then in the afternoon we would read good books on history and science. So that was kind of what our elementary school day looked like. We were often done at lunchtime, and then our afternoons were spent exploring and being outside and learning about topics that we were interested in from library books or any other source, that we could find. At the middle and high school level, because we use classical conversations, we're spending about an hour on each subject. So there are 6. So it's a 6-hour school day. So it looks very similar to a typical school day with the caveat that we can flex. So my daughter rides horses. As she went up through, she had a homeschool class that was during the school day. So
Mhm.
she was out at the barn 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock, let's say, once or twice a week. So we would just flex that and make up the time, make up whatever she needed to get done. She got it done. Sometimes she front loaded her week and she would work a really long day. She was working from 9 in the morning till 5 at night so she could get it all in. But that left her half a day or even a whole day some weeks, depending on the workload be at the barn. So she was a working student at the barn. My sons are in scouts, so they're doing a lot of scout projects. They're able to do that
Mhm.
with the flexibility. And then sometimes a lot of parents are working. They don't have somebody at home. That's where you get your community. You get your grandparents, your
Mhm.
aunts and uncles, your friends who are homeschooling. that take your student. I'm not sure what that looks like at the elementary level because they do need so much side by side
Hmm.
direction. But for middle and high school students, I see it work well. They do have to learn independence and they are accountable. And so sometimes the things are happening in the evening when dad comes home from work or mom comes home from work. Okay, what'd you do? Let me see. And so there are some discussions at dinner time. So it really is family dependent.
Hmm.
I kinda had a more traditional day because I stay at home with my kids, and
Hmm.
I'm freshest, and I don't wanna be doing math at 5 p.m. But I do have a lot of friends. Some of them work from home, and so they're home with their kids, they're giving some oversight, but it's, all flavors and colors, and families figure it out.
Wow. You know, a lot of parents fear that, hey, I may not be able to teach my child, even though we all have been through graduation, college, masters, but we always worry about if we do a good enough job. Maybe up to fifth grade, I could, but middle school and high school scare me, especially for subjects like math. How do you find tutors? Or when do you know you have to get a tutor? Like, have you ever used tutors for your children?
So I haven't personally used tutors, but I have used support. So for example, when my daughter got to pre-calculus level, we were in algebra 2 trig and I thought, she's just not getting enough instruction and I can't do it. I've got 3 other kids and I honestly don't remember that. But when she got to that level, I thought, you know what? For a couple of reasons, we're going to enroll her in this class at the community college. So she took pre-calculus this past year for 2 semesters. It was good because she learned how to be accountable to someone other than mom for her academics, which is a good transition because she's going to be going to college. That was great. She was navigating online, putting her assignments online. She was navigating testing in a new way. And that was really great. And it took the weight off of me. So you outsource. There's online instruction, there's tutoring. When do you know when to do it? I think it's when you're feeling like there's a gap and you can't make up the gap with your time.
Did you ever consider just sending them to school, whether it's public or private, because you were feeling overwhelmed or there was a gap? Like, because you're anyway paying for these extra classes, right?
Mhm.
So then you might as well pay for a private school. Or what was holding you back from putting them in a traditional school system?
Well, of course, it's student dependent, but homeschooling is kind of a lifestyle, and we love the lifestyle. I love being able to be with my kids, to influence my kids, to be kind of the primary voice in their life, and then to be able to outsource when I need to, whether that's with religious instruction, subjects that I'm having trouble with. I have a lot of friends who have used the expertise of parents for math and science. I don't feel that strong in science, but we've got this curriculum. I just spent the last year meeting once a week with my daughter's chemistry class. We would go over the questions in the module together. This way, the parents that felt weak in chemistry, they knew their student was going to have that once a week time with me, and we were going to work things out together. They were doing the labs in class, and then they were doing the formal lab reports at home. So we could also kind of work on the conclusions and figure out, well, what results did you get? So we were able to do those conversations once a week. I never really wanted to give up the flexibility and culture we have at home with my kids. You talked about private school. So the cost of private school like is astronomical to compared to what I'm paying. I'm paying a couple hundred. When I put my daughter into community college, I'm paying $1,000 for a whole school year. She's going to come out with 6 college credits that she can use in college. So it's dual enrollment,
Hmm.
kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone. So I don't see that as an exorbitant fee.
Hmm.
Now I know that there are families that money is tight and they don't want to have to pay that fee.
Hmm.
And I understand that. And so there are cheaper ways to get help. And sometimes it's just when you're a part of a community with the co ops and things, you just have the access to other people with expertise. We have parents that are working for NIH. Well, they know science. They can coach my student in how to do a science fair project if I can't. So we're just working as a community.
Do you feel like the community is nicer, more empathetic, more helpful than the community you meet at a traditional school or the parents?
Well, that's a good question.
One thing I've noticed is that homeschooling cuts out that crazy competition that normal schools come with. Do you agree with that or is it different?
Yeah, I would say that kids are kids. And so when they're adolescents, they are trying to prove themselves or they're unsure of themselves, their bodies, their personalities. Am I accepted? Do I belong here? And so I think with a smaller group, you get more a sense of that belonging. And then with more parental oversight, there's an ability to correct things quicker and say, wait a minute, how would you feel if someone said that about you? Or the co op that we're a part of is Christian. And so we abide by Christian values. And so those are taught and expected in the classroom. So if we're having trouble with bullying or with kids kind of being apathetic about their work, we're going to have a conversation about we believe in the Bible. And so what does the Bible say about our conduct? So we kind of have that added in there. But I know in this area, there are other co ops that are very similar, whether they're Islam, other religions. And I think that's the secular homeschool groups too are wanting their kids to be good citizens, wanting their kids to be kind. And so because parents are seeing it more and there's less volume of people, I think you can address things. It doesn't mean it's perfect. We've had plenty of scenarios where there's been stretching needing to happen. Oh, wait a minute. I don't think you're building your character in a way that you want to, or we're not going to bully. All those things still exist
Hmm.
because people are people, but you can address them quicker. And I think having the voice of other adults in your children's lives that you trust
Hmm.
is super important. So in where we can get that as a family is in our co-op. We know those other adults, they know my children
Hmm.
and they know that I'm okay if they speak into my children's lives. And I know you can get that in the public school system with coaches and teachers are they're pouring out into the children. I think what I appreciate about homeschool is that my husband and I are the primary voice in our children's lives.
Hmm.
The other adults are ones that we know and trust. And as far as socialization and extracurriculars, it's not a problem. The sky's the limit around here. There's
That
so
is
many things to get
actually
involved in.
one of my questions. What about socialization? I always worry, will my child just end up with no friends? How do you make sure your child is getting that group of friends?
Well, being in a tutorial, being in a co-op, you have an instant group of friends because you're meeting with them at least once, if not more, 2, 3 times a week. So those become your friends. In addition to that, like when we were early and young and we had more margin in our day, we were a part of a Western Howard County homeschool group. It was we found them on Facebook and they did field trips. So we met with them like once a month for field trips. And you kind of build a relationship out of that. Oh, hey, our kids get along and we have flexibility. Can we meet up for a hike sometime? So it's kind of funny, like people say, okay, you do have to be home sometimes to actually homeschool because the families are so involved and the kids have so many interests, just like a lot of kids do. They have to actually intentionally say no to things so they can be home and get their math and science done because it's kind of a lot more fun to go out and be on sports teams and involved in orchestras and involved in art classes and all the extra things. So I don't think that really socialization is at all a problem. If you had a child that had social anxieties and reasons why there might be some limitations, then I think also the co-ops are nice because they're in a smaller group environment and the parent can choose what to get their child involved in. And over the course of time, they can build the skill of being with people.
What about, and I know you've not been through this experience personally, but a lot of people pull out their kids from private or public schools because of some reason, whether they're suffering in academics or they're so brilliant that they're not getting what their child needs in that school, or
Mhm.
there's bullying. Do
Sure.
you have some examples that you can give me where parents have actually made that decision to pull out, and what were the reasons?
Yes. I think the bullying and the social things are a huge reason why parents are pulling their kids out. And they're able to then kind of bring them to a space where they can thrive, where the focus is on building their confidence, letting them share. So in our co-op, the kids even at the elementary level, at the elementary level, they have a presentation due every week. And when they're young, it's very simple. It's like show and tell, but they're just getting the opportunity to be in front of a class of kids, 6, 7, 8 kids. It's a small class. But we're learning how to be good audience, we're learning how to be kind, and we're learning how to applause and celebrate what the person has shared. And when you have a student that has been bullied, they're shy about that. They're not sure when they can come in front. But if you do this time and time again, and it's kind of very I won't say the expectations are low, but it's a simple presentation. Then, as they build that skill, now in middle school, we're doing science fair. We're having to present our project. We're learning how to debate. We're doing speeches. We're memorizing, Shakespeare and presenting it. So you have built that skill. And I've seen a lot of kids come in middle school because that seems to be where the bullying and the social anxieties happen. And being away from that environment and just being encouraged in a safe environment has really helped them thrive.
But do you think some people or critics would say you're shielding your kids from the real world problems? Like, this is what the real world is. People are mean, people are nasty, they're going to say hurtful things to you, and you
Mm.
just have to learn how to deal with it. What is your opinion on that?
I think that it's important to figure out where our kids are developmentally and give them what they're ready for. So you're right, we can't shield our kids. They've got to be environments where they're dealing with hard things. I don't think homeschooling shields them from that, but sometimes you need to give a buffer and time for maturity to happen and confidence to build. And so the parents that have pooled their students, they're not going to be shielded forever, but they're giving them a little margin to figure out who they are, to build the confidence. And for the highly achieving student who maybe is getting bullied, they're getting a space where they feel like now I can be around people that value academics, or I'm just given flexibility in what I'm studying and how far I'm going with the program. So yeah, I do think it's a balance, and it can be tricky for families. And there's not going to be just a formula. We kind of want like, give me the list, and if I do these things, my kid's going to turn out okay. And we just don't get that guarantee. But as parents, I think you make the best decision you can. And with homeschooling, you're more in the driver's seat than you are when your child is in private or public school.
I want to understand is why, and I know things are changing now, but when you think of homeschooling and you hear parents say, "Oh, I'm homeschooling my kids," you wonder, oh, they must be doing it because of religious reasons or they're part of some kind of group. But, and I know, like, I'm not part of any religious group, but I have considered it many times, mostly because I feel like my child is academically and socially more mature than her peers at school. Why do people judge so much? And do you still feel that judgment around you when you say I'm homeschooling my kids?
I feel like most people receive us very well when we say we homeschool. I mean, just like your response when you found out my daughter was homeschooled.
I was like, oh my God, so excited to learn more about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most people are just curious about it. I
Okay.
think some people in the public school system might feel a little offended.
Mm-hmm.
My heart towards the public school is not that they are terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are doing the best that they can. They actually have a tall order to take kids from various
Walks
demographics,
of life. Yeah.
cultures, backgrounds, academic abilities, physical abilities, put them all in one big classroom and try to communicate something, right? Communicate the math for that day. There's just a lot going on. We find that even in our homeschool. There are times when we stop the lesson and we deal with character issues. It's just a part of it. So I feel like we have been, and it might just be because in Maryland, there are a lot of homeschoolers and there are a lot of organizations that support homeschooling, that we've never felt ostracized or made fun of or criticized
Mm-hmm.
because of homeschool. People are usually just curious and want to know why we're making that decision. How does it work for our family? So I don't think that the homeschool kids that my kids are friends with feel weird or different.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like you said, I think at the beginning, it has changed over the course of time. If you were homeschooling in the 1980s, you were not. That was very, very unusual. And I think critics of homeschooling would say, like, what about the parents that are toxic? What about the unhealthy environments? Do we need oversight on what the kids are learning? Because we live in a free country where we have the opportunity to homeschool our kids, but is that okay? And I think with the state mandated oversight, I don't feel that it's intrusive into the privacy of somebody's home, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's good to know there is consistent instruction in the subjects we want. We want an educated populace. We
Yeah.
don't want someone to just learn guitar and that's the only thing they've learned their whole homeschool career, right? So I think that's good. But yeah, generally I don't feel harsh criticism for our choice.
That's good to know. You spoke briefly about character building and working on children's behavior at home. One thing I worry about is it's so hard to get them to sit down forget, sit down and study, you know? How do you create that environment in the house that, hey, if I'm going to homeschool you, these are the hours you're going to study, these are the expectations. Do you have any advice for parents who struggle with that, just generally, how to discipline, and then you creating that environment for a homeschool kid?
Yeah. I mean, in generally for discipline, I think you have to be clear and concise and follow through. So if they understand the expectation and then you follow through with the consequence, you're building that platform in your home of this is what it looks like. That is not to say that every time I've said it's time to sit down and do math, that my kids have been like, oh, it's time, like they're kids.
Yeah.
We're all human.
Yeah.
And so then we're having a conversation about who are you going to be? Are you going to be a person who does what is asked of you? You're going to have a boss one day that's asking you to do things you don't always want to do. I don't actually want to sit down and do math with you right now as your mom, but we're going to do it because it's a good task and it's good to build our brain. It's good to struggle through hard things and it's good to just submit to authorities over us. So the authority over us today is and for this 45 minutes to an hour is we're going to do our math. But I think you can incentivize things better and you can work with the developmental age of your child. So sitting down, I think a lot of elementary school kids have trouble. They're wiggly, they're busy, they're kinetic learners, they're wanting to learn through activity. So I have had to learn to make margin for that, learn how kids learn. And if my son's reading a book while he's bouncing a ball, I'm okay. You can't do that in school we can't have 20 kids in a classroom bouncing a ball, then it turns into chaos. But that can be very developmentally appropriate.
Hmm.
Or maybe we just do a shorter lesson and let him go run outside for a little bit, and then we're going to come back for another lesson. So you do have that flexibility with homeschooling. I think it can be tricky to consider your homeschool looking like a classroom.
Hmm.
But I will say that timers have helped us a lot and being flexible has helped us a lot. So, and also trying to have an eye for where are we learning? Some days, because I have felt like a failure, I have felt like giving up. I have felt like, did we learn today? What did we do? So it's just that time I take to self reflect and say, what did happen today? Because I feel like all I did was put out fires and discipline children, and the dog came in with muddy feet and it felt like chaos. I was
Yeah.
running a circus instead of a homeschool.
Mm.
What did we learn? We learned how to problem solve. We did get some math problems done. It might not have been as many as I hoped. And we read some good books and we got that science experiment taken care of. And you learn to value and see that the learning is life.
Hmm. Yeah, that does make sense. And I think you just have to find your family's style and rhythm and then go for it and not doubt yourself, right? Regarding testing, you have to see where your child stands at some point, right? Just for your own sanity that you're doing a good job. Do you enroll your kid in any kind of state or national testing to see where they are?
I have, yep. And so you have that option to test with the public schools.
Mm-hmm.
You can check that box when you fill in your form. You say, I do want my kids tested, and they'll let you know when those testings are. I've never done that because I've wondered, are they teaching something that I'm not covering? Like, for example, are they teaching Maryland history in fourth grade that I'm not teaching that in fourth grade? I'm teaching something else in history. So I haven't done those tests, and I don't know anybody who has, but there are some standardized tests that you can pay to do. And we used to proctor them at our community and our co op. So now you can proctor them at home online. And you just pay a fee and take the test and you get the report. Okay, this is where your student lies. Same kind of, graphs and looking at averages and means and where they fell. So that can be helpful, especially the first couple of years if you're feeling like, man, okay, this is new territory for us. Are we doing okay? I think too, you can test your student too. A lot of the curriculums come with tests, so you can test them. It's good for them to learn to test. I wasn't a heavy tester in the young years. My testing was, okay, have they learned to read? Are they reading harder books?
Mm.
Increasing in their reading. When I asked them to give me a summary, can they do it? Do they have reading comprehension? It was more oral testing. I was checking their math. They were either getting it or they weren't, and we would just revisit how to do it if they weren't mastering the skill. So obviously, as they get older, we did SAT prep with my oldest. She's going to be going into her senior year. She just finished taking the SAT in May. So I think you have to be a little more proactive as a homeschool parent because I
Mm-hmm.
don't have a guidance counselor feeding me things or my student thinks, hey, it's time to do this.
Mm-hmm.
But there are tons of resources. And again, if you do have a homeschool community,
Mm-hmm.
you're working together, you're learning from each other about about that. But I would say if your student is going to go on to education outside of high school, they
Hmm.
need to get used to how to take a test. What does that look like? And you want to be so if you are an oral evaluator, at some point, you gotta have them sit down and take a test. That's just how I see it.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. To end things, Brandy, mental health and burnout for the mom. It's a lot being a teacher, a mom, a homemaker. How do you manage that relationship with your children without getting frustrated? How do you manage your own stress? And do you ever get stressed?
I for sure get stressed. Yeah. And so I manage it by taking time for myself. So typically I'm up before them and I've done something. I've exercised, I've had quiet time. So then I'm ready to be available. And I'm home. And so I need to not answer my phone. I put my phone on silent so that I'm focused on school when we're focused on school. And we take breaks when we need to. And again, it's that whole philosophy of reminding yourself what your priorities are for the school year, for the week, for the day. What are the priorities? And trying to stick with that and not get overwhelmed because you can't, no one can do it all at ever, and no one can do it all in one day. So I have definitely questioned myself. I have definitely thought, is this crazy? But I think that that is normal as a parent anyway, whether you're home educating or not. We have always homeschooled. So the culture is just when you're bored, I'm like, you're going to be bored and use that boredom to be creative. Here are all the craft supplies. You have trees out in the yard to go climb. Well, I can give them like some ideas to kind
Hmm.
of guide them. And then I'm like, and I'm going to go read a book or I'm going to go drink some hot tea. When they were really little and I needed a break, I really relished nap time. That was great.
Yeah.
And I also would say, "Okay, I'm done." And I would put them in the car with an audiobook of my choosing that I knew was gonna just be inspiring and build their language skills and their listening skills, and we would go for a drive, and they would listen to an audiobook while we drove. So I felt like I'm kind of just not having to answer, "Mommy, mommy, mommy." For me, being outside is calming and inspiring, and you're moving your body, and it clears my mind. So we used a lot of outside time.
Hmm.
Taking the breaks, taking a deep breath, being out in nature, getting some sunshine, moving your body, setting timers and saying, "For that period of time, I focused, and then I can put my work away for a minute."
Hmm.
So I think those things really get you through. And then obviously in the summer, we take a slower pace, which
Yeah.
is great.
Wow. Brandy, if you could give me three pros and three cons of homeschooling, what would those be? And if there are none, that's fine. But
Mhm.
if something that comes to your mind.
Well, the benefits, I think it's individualized education because you have the time, you have only a few students versus the 20 that might be in a third grade classroom, for example. And parents know their kids best. So that's both good and bad because you can push each other's buttons in the wrong way. But I think overall, I'm just filled with gratitude for the ability to spend the time. They grow up very quickly, and I've had really the ability to pour into my kids in their foundational years so they can launch well. They know who they are, they're confident. We've been able to spend time together as a family because we're flexible. We can take that break in February when we're all feeling like it's freezing cold. The days are dark. And, I think doing hard things together with the people that you've been placed with, your family, is important. So, whether we're serving together in the community, whether we're wrestling with a math problem, whether we're having a difficult conversation about politics and reading history and saying, what? This doesn't make sense. Who are we as a people, as a nation? What are the values? Those are just precious moments that I wish every family could have because homeschooling is a commitment and it does require some sacrifice and it does require some adjusting to the life if especially if you're coming from public school. I don't think socialization is a con at all. I think it's not a problem. Some people worry about am I going to do enough with math and science for my child? Those seem to be the triggers. Again, I have not seen that to be a problem. In fact, most of our scientists and mathematicians learned classically. They did a lot of word study, grammar, asking good questions, and then finding answers. And so with classical conversations, we're able to do that. And our kids that are graduating from there are going to MIT, they're going to state universities, they're studying engineering, they're studying biology, along with others. I would say possibly a con would be if you have an athlete. In the state of Maryland, we cannot participate in sports with the public school system. So some states allow that from their homeschoolers. Maryland does not. So most of the people that have that situation where they have a strong athlete in the home, especially at the high school level. They're doing club, and a lot of them are able to still get college scholarships for their sport through that.
Okay.
That does take a commitment from the parents, money, time to drive them to where they're going to practice and to the meets and all. But there are ways to work around some of the unique things that homeschooling, maybe like something you might think is a con from homeschooling.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so, so much, Brandy. This has been so insightful. I loved talking about this topic, and you've been so great with answering all my questions. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. Thank you. Bye bye.